Topic for today is diabetes mellitus in pregnancy. As you all know, diabetes mellitus is a chronic metabolic disorder due to either insulin deficiency or due to peripheral tissue resistance to the action of insulin. This was the earlier recommended classification where gestational diabetes was divided into two types, A1 and A2. A1 which can be cured by diet and A2 which is insulin dependent. This is the newer classification. It is the ADA classification of diabetes mellitus and it is recommended by ACOG. So it is divided into gestational diabetes mellitus or GDM and pre-gestational diabetes mellitus, that is pre-existing diabetes, which is again further divided into type 1 diabetes mellitus, type 2 diabetes mellitus and others like MODY, genetic syndromes, disease of the exocrine pancreas, endocrinopathies, drugs or chemical induced and infections. So coming to gestational diabetes mellitus. So it is defined as carbohydrate intolerance of variable severity with onset of first recognition during the present pregnancy. It occurs due to exaggerated physiological changes in the glucose metabolism and impaired insulin action. Now, why this insulin antagonism occurs? It is due to the effect of human placental lactogen, estrogen, progesterone, free cortisol, and insulin degradation by the placenta. Worldwide, 1 in 10 pregnancies is associated with diabetes, of which 90% are GDM. In India, the rate is 10 to 14%, which is quite high, and this is expected to increase to 20%. Now coming to the screening and diagnosis of GDM. A universal recommendation for the ideal approach for the screening and diagnosis of GDM remains elusive. Some advocate routine screening of all the pregnant mothers, whereas others reserve it for potential candidates. So one is risk-based screening strategy. So the women are divided into 3 categories according to the risk involved. So low risk is those who belong to ethnic group having low prevalence of GDM, having no known diabetes in first degree relatives, age is less, weight is normal, not only before pregnancy but also at birth, and has no history of abnormal glucose metabolism. Then in the average risk category includes the ethnic group with high prevalence of GDM or diabetes in first degree relatives, age more than 35 years, overweight before pregnancy and high weight at birth. High risk group includes marked obesity, strong family history of type 2 diabetes and previous history of GDM or impaired glucose metabolism or glycosuria. Now what does ACOG recommend? ACOG recommends universal screening for GDM. It recommends a 2-step approach, that is, first a 50 grams 1 hour oral glucose challenge test is done at 24 to 28 weeks of pregnancy, and this is followed by a diagnostic 100 grams 3-hour oral glucose tolerance test if screening test meets or exceeds a predetermined plasma glucose concentration. Now in the glucose challenge test, what we do, 50 grams of anhydrous glucose is given orally irrespective of the time of the day or previous meal, and then the venous blood glucose is tested after 1 hour. The cutoff used for diagnosis of the test determines its sensitivity. ACOG sanctions any one of these 3 cutoff values, that is 130, 135 and 140 milligram per deciliter. Now what is the 100 grams oral glucose tolerance test? So this test is done after overnight fasting. A solution of 100 grams anhydrous glucose is given orally and then blood is taken and tested for the sugar level. So these are the levels of fasting 1 hour, 2 hour and 3 hours. 2 different criteria are given here, NDDG criteria and Carpenter and Houston criteria, and GDM is diagnosed when any 2 or more values are abnormal. So we come to the next category. This is the category criteria by the International Association of Diabetes and Pregnancy Study Group, which was recommended in 2010. This is based on the hypoglycemia and pregnancy outcome study, where 70 grams of oral glucose tolerance test is done between 24 to 32 weeks of pregnancy after overnight fasting, and here the blood glucose is measured fasting, and then 2 more studies are done, that is at 1 hour and 2 hours after injection of glucose. So the cutoff values: fasting is more than or equal to 92 mg per deciliter, 1 hour postprandial it is more than or equal to 180 mg per deciliter, and 2 hour postprandial more than or equal to 153 mg per deciliter. The GDM is diagnosed when any one of these values is exceeded. Next is the NICE guidelines. This is done at 24 to 28 weeks of pregnancy. 75 oral glucose tolerance test is done here. Fasting blood glucose is measured, and then 2 hours after a postprandial blood glucose level is measured. So if either one of the two values is exceeded, then GDM is diagnosed. Next, coming to the WHO criteria. GDM should be diagnosed at any time in pregnancy if one or more following criteria are met. That is, fasting blood glucose 92 to 125 mg per deciliter, and 2 hour plasma glucose is 153 to 199 mg per deciliter following a 75 grams oral glucose load. So this serves the dual purpose of both screening and diagnosis. This is the Diabetes in Pregnancy Societies of India, that is DIPSI recommendation, where universal screening of all pregnant women is recommended. It is a one-step procedure. 75 grams oral glucose is given irrespective of the time of last meal, and if the plasma glucose at 2 hours postprandial is more than or equal to 140 mg per deciliter, it is diagnosed as GDM. So it is a very simplified way to diagnose GDM. What are the complications of GDM? So maternal complications include increased incidence of preeclampsia, polyhydramnios, infections like pyelonephritis, increased rate of operative interference, and the recurrence rate in subsequent pregnancies around 50%. Fetal complications are macrosomia, increased perinatal loss, which is usually associated with fasting hypoglycemia, the neonatal hypoglycemia, hypocalcemia, hyperglycemia, hyperviscosity, and cardiomyopathy. Coming to the principles of management of GDM. So we should attempt to bring about proper glycemic control by diet, exercise, and if necessary, insulin. So what is the medical nutrition therapy? So this is the first line of therapy of GDM. The calorie intake depends on the BMI of the pregnant lady. So if it is less than 25, we recommend 3000 calorie per kg intake. If it is 25 to 30, then 2500, and more than 40, 1250 calories per kg calorie intake. The diet should contain complex carbohydrates rich in fibers and should be contributed 50 to 60% from carbohydrates, 20% from protein, 25 to 30% from fat, with less than 10% saturated fat. The calories must be met from 3 major and 3 minor meals at equal intervals. Dietary intervention is usually prescribed for 2 weeks with regular blood sugar monitoring. If the target blood sugar is not achieved in 2 weeks, then we add insulin. However, if the pregnancy is already advanced and there is no time for waiting, then what we can do, then we can start insulin even earlier as judged by the physician. Exercise. Regular 30 minutes of mild to moderate exercise per day helps in improving the glycemic control by improving the insulin sensitivity in the skeletal muscles. Insulin therapy remains the gold standard in the treatment of both GDM and pregestational diabetes. ACOG recommends that insulin be considered in women with 1 hour postprandial levels exceeding 140 mg per deciliter or 2 hour level exceeding 120 mg per deciliter. The starting dose of insulin is 0.7 to 1 unit per kg per day given in divided doses. We use a combination of intermediate acting and short acting insulin. The total daily requirement is 2/3 in the morning and 1/3 at night. The morning dose consists of 2/3 NPH and 1/3 short acting insulin. The pre-dinner dose is half NPH and half short acting. The patient needs to be taught self-administration of insulin and also warned against signs of hypoglycemia. 4-hourly glucose monitoring every day, that is fasting, and 1 to 2 hours after each meal is recommended. Patient may also be offered continuous subcutaneous insulin infusion pump therapy and continuous glucose monitoring if adequate control is not obtained by multiple daily insulin injection. And ACOG recognizes these two oral hypoglycemic drugs, that is metformin and glibenclamide, as reasonable choices for second-line glycemic control in GDM cases. However, these are yet not FDA approved. Fetal surveillance test and hospitalization at 34 weeks is recommended if there is poor glycemic control. The expectant management is continued in well-controlled cases. Termination of pregnancy is done at 38 completed weeks in insulin-treated GDM. Cesarean section is required if the fetal weight is expected to be above 4.5 kg. Patients with GDM often do not require insulin after delivery. Then the 5th International Conference on GDM recommends a 75 grams 2-hour oral glucose tolerance test for women with GDM at 6 to 12 weeks after delivery, and if this is normal, 3-yearly assessment should be done. And those who are overweight should be advised to reduce weight. 50% of GDM cases develop over diabetes over a period of 20 years. Next we come to over diabetes. Over diabetes means the condition is pre-existing or it may be detected for the first time during the present pregnancy. So what is the WHO criteria for diagnosis of over diabetes? So if the fasting glucose is more than or equal to 126 mg per deciliter, or the 2-hour post plasma glucose is more than or equal to 200 mg per deciliter following a 75 grams oral glucose intake, or a random plasma glucose level more than or equal to 200 mg per deciliter. In addition, ADA also recommends HbA1c value of more than 6.5%. Coming to the effects of diabetes on pregnancy. So this is different from GDM cases. It depends on the glycemic control, the cardiovascular and renal status of the pregnant lady. So maternal complications during pregnancy includes abortion, preterm labor, various kinds of infections, polyhydramnios, preeclampsia, the progression of pre-existing diabetic retinopathy, neuropathy, nephropathy, and coronary artery disease, and ketoacidosis. During labor, prolonged labor due to big baby, shoulder dystocia, perineal injuries, postpartum hemorrhage, and increased operative interference. Puerperal complications include puerperal sepsis, lactation failure. Fetal complications. Fetal macrosomia around 40 to 50% of cases. Maternal hyperglycemia causes fetal hyperinsulinemia, which is believed to cause increased growth of the fetus. The risk of having congenital malformations is 6 to 10%. This is due to altered lipid metabolism, increased production of toxic superoxide radicals, and programmed cell death. IUGR may be seen if there is maternal vasculopathy or in the presence of congenital malformation in the fetus. Then birth injuries mainly related to macrosomia and shoulder dystocia. In unexplained fetal death, the rate is 3 to 4 times higher. possible causes are hyperglycemia, ketoacidosis, placental insufficiency. Neonatal complications are hypoglycemia, respiratory distress syndrome, hyperbilirubinemia, polycythemia, hypocalcemia, hypomagnesemia, and cardiomyopathy. Long-term effects like childhood obesity, metabolic syndrome, neurological effects, and diabetes. The overall perinatal mortality is increased 2 to 3 times. What other congenital anomalies we may come across in a fetus with diabetic mother? CNS anomalies like caudal regression syndrome, the neural tube defects, anencephaly, sacral agenesis, cardiovascular system, ventricular or atrial septal defect, coarctation of aorta, transposition of great vessels and situs inversus, renal agenesis, hydronephrosis, duplication of ureter, GI problems like duodenal atresia, anorectal atresia, omphalocele, tracheoesophageal fistula, and single umbilical artery. Management. So this should begin with preconceptional counseling. Our goal is to achieve a tight control before the onset of pregnancy. For this, we need to take a complete medical and obstetric history. Good glycemic control with preconceptional counseling can reduce fetal congenital malformation from 6 to 10% to as less than 0.8 to 2%. Those with glycosylated hemoglobin of more than 10% should be advised to avoid pregnancy. The target plasma glucose level in women with pregestational diabetes should be fasting less than or equal to 95, 1 hour less than or equal to 140, and 2 hour postprandial less than or equal to 120 milligrams per deciliter, and glycosylated hemoglobin less than 6.1%. The chance of having a diabetic child is about 3 to 4% when either parent is diabetic, and it is 40% if both parents are diabetic. The diet, as mentioned earlier, should include complex carbohydrates high in fiber, just like in GDM cases, and regular glucose monitoring should be advised. Folic acid 400 milligrams per day is to be started from the preconceptional period. Fetal surveillance in diabetes. First trimester early sonography for the confirmation of viability and dating. Then we may go for serum pregnancy associated plasma protein A and free beta HCG for detecting chromosomal anomalies between 11 to 14 weeks of gestation. The sonography at 11 to 12 weeks can detect neural tube defects. Nuchal translucency is an important marker to detect chromosomal anomaly. In the second trimester, maternal serum alpha protein at 16 to 20 weeks and a detailed anomaly scan at 18 to 20 weeks. Fetal echocardiography around for 24 weeks to detect cardiac anomalies. And in case of diabetes complicated with hypertension or IUGR, umbilical artery Doppler is done. In the third trimester, NICE guidelines suggest 4-weekly monitoring of fetal growth from 28 to 36 weeks. Then the lady should be advised to go for daily fetal movement counts beginning in the third trimester. Those with history of stillbirths or those requiring insulin who develop hypertension or eclampsia or pregestational diabetes should be monitored with twice weekly non-stress test starting at 32 weeks with biophysical profile as backup test. However, no single test of fetal surveillance is adequate and the entire clinical picture must definitely be taken into consideration. Coming to the timing and the mode of delivery. Most associations recommend delivery after 38 completed weeks of pregnancy. ACOG guidelines, the cutoff for elective cesarean with fetal weight more than 4.5 kg. However, in the Indian population, in one study, diagnosis of GDM considered birth weight at 3.45 kg as macrosomia. Otherwise, vaginal delivery is not a contraindication. In any case, pregnancy should not be allowed to overrun the expected date of delivery. Management during labor. Consent should be taken explaining the high risk, the need for instrumental delivery or cesarean section. Prior to the day of induction of labor, the usual bedtime insulin and dinner is taken. No breakfast or morning dose insulin is given on the day of induction. The fasting blood glucose is to be done. It should be between 72 to 126 milligrams per deciliter. 2 IV lines must be secured. Normal saline infusion is started. If the blood glucose falls to below 70 milligram per deciliter, it has to be changed to 5% dextrose and delivered at a rate of 100 to 150 ml per hour so as to achieve a blood glucose level of approximately 100 milligram per deciliter. Regular short-acting insulin is administered by IV infusion if the blood glucose level exceeds 100 mg per deciliter. The dose is then adjusted according to the glucose level. So if it is between 100 to 126 mg per deciliter, we go at the rate of 1 units per hour, 126 to 180, 2 units per hour, 180 to 240, 3 units per hour, and it is above, if it is above 240, then 4 units per hour. The fetus is closely monitored to detect any signs of distress. Hourly blood glucose has to be measured. Induction may be done by low rupture of membrane and simultaneous oxytocin drip may be started. Cord should be clamped immediately after. A neonatologist has to be present at the time of delivery. Asphyxia is to be anticipated and treated effectively. Babies should have blood glucose checked within 2 hours of delivery because they may develop hypoglycemia. They should receive vitamin K injection and early breastfeeding is to be initiated so as to minimize hypoglycemia. During the puerperium period, antibiotics are to be given to prevent infections. In patients with over-diabetes after delivery, there is rapid fall in insulin requirement, so the dose needs to be adjusted. Breastfeeding is encouraged. In case of diabetes or impaired glucose tolerance, both medical nutrition therapy and pharmacotherapy are required depending on the degree of intolerance. Contraceptive advice is a must. Barrier methods are ideal. Progesterone only pills are also safe. However, combined OC pills are to be avoided, especially if it is a long duration diabetes. IUCD is also contraindicated because there is a risk of infection. Sterilization is to be considered when the family is complete. A few lines about diabetic ketoacidosis. It occurs in 1% of diabetic mother and needs immediate intervention. It is most common in type 1 diabetes mellitus, but it may be precipitated in conditions like stress, diarrhea, infection, or preterm labor. Here, the blood glucose level is above 250 mg per deciliter. However, during pregnancy, it may occur at a lower level. There is ketone bodies in blood and urine. The arterial pH less than 7.3, serum bicarbonate less than 15 milliequivalents per liter. So we should go for laboratory studies like blood glucose, urine ketone bodies, blood gases, electrolytes, CBC, ECG, chest X-ray. So how do we manage such a case? So periodic monitoring of the patient's condition like pulse, BP, input output, CBG, urine ketone, blood gases and electrolytes are done. Fetal condition is monitored. IV fluid is started. Severe dehydration is corrected by giving 4 to 6 liters of fluid with normal saline, which should be replaced in 12 to 24 hours. Then we start IV insulin at the rate of 0.2 units per kg, which is the bolus dose, followed by 0.1 unit per kg per hour in normal saline. Further dose adjustment depends on the blood glucose levels. The blood glucose levels are to be kept between 100 to 150 mg per deciliter. IV potassium should be given if the potassium level is low. Bicarbonate is given if pH level is low, below 6.8, and at the same time antibiotics are also to be given.